Welcome, forest friends. It's time to enter the forest and see what we discover. Open your mind and wander with us for a bit. Welcome back, forest friends, to the Alder Branch Podcast. If you've been walking with us through the forest so far, you've stepped through the entrance in Episode 1, felt the weight of thinking in Episode 2, and discovered the map, our Designing for Thinking framework, in Episode 3. Today we continue deeper into the learning woods with Episode 4, titled Reading the Cognitive Weather. Because even the most beautifully designed lesson can drift off course if we do not know how to read the signals students send us. The subtle shifts in thinking, attention, confusion, engagement, and overwhelm. These signals are not always obvious, and they rarely shout, they whisper, they flicker, they drift through the room like a change in the wind. And just like a skilled forest ranger can sense a storm before a single raindrop falls, a skilled educator learns to sense cognitive shifts long before a hand goes up or a behavior erupts. Today we explore that art. Let's begin where we often overlook the simplest truth. Students almost never tell us directly when they're overloaded. Most people don't say, "My working memory has reached maximum bandwidth and can no longer process incoming information." No, they say, "I don't get this." Or they say nothing at all. They drift. They check out. They sharpen a pencil for 2 minutes and 37 seconds, hoping the escape route reveals itself. What looks like distraction or disinterest is often what researchers like Sweller, Paas, and Leppink have been telling us for decades: a cognitive system pushed past capacity. So how do we see it coming? This is where the Alder Branch Designing for Thinking framework becomes our barometer, especially the 5 domains in the classroom cognitive load observation rubric. Today we focus on how to read what those domains reveal. Let's start with instructional design and clarity, because cognitive weather often shifts the moment instructions begin. When learning goals are clear, directions are singular, and pacing supports comprehension, students stay grounded. But when design becomes muddy, when directions contain too many steps, goals are not referenced, or pacing races ahead, the cognitive clouds begin to gather. The early signs of a storm? Students ask procedural questions rather than conceptual ones. They wait for someone else to start. Their eyes drift between the task and the teacher, unsure of where to anchor their thinking. Then we move to materials and representations. This domain is where cognitive friction often hides. Cluttered layouts, redundant text, visuals that compete rather than clarify. When materials introduce unnecessary load, student cognition becomes noisy. They squint, they reread, they hesitate, or they cling to a single part of the visual even when it doesn't help. Forest friends, materials are not neutral. They shape cognition as much as instruction does. Next, let's look at cognitive work and student thinking, the domain where the cognitive weather becomes unmistakable. When students are in productive cognitive struggle, the good kind, the germane load kind, you see head nodding, murmurs of sense-making, connection-making, comparisons, clarifying questions, pauses that reflect thinking rather than confusion. But when thinking collapses, you see completion without comprehension. You see students copying from peers. You see answers without reasoning. You see disengagement disguised as compliance, the quietest cognitive storm of all. Now we come to teacher responsiveness and cognitive adjustment, a domain that defines masterful teaching. The skilled educator senses when the cognitive air pressure changes. They slow down, they remodel, they add structure, they remove unnecessary friction, they chunk, they breathe. The unresponsive classroom, through no fault of intention, continues marching through content even as thought has already left the room. The forest does not care whether you plan to walk 3 miles today. The forest cares whether the path is safe. And finally, we reach student cognitive indicators, the ground level truth of the cognitive weather. Level 1 indicators, productive cognitive struggle, show focus, effort, idea testing, clarification between peers. Students are mentally hiking, even if the trail is steep. Level 2 indicators are mixed. Some are tracking, some are lost. Some need rereading, regrouping, or simply a slower pace. Level 3 indicators are the storm hitting full force. Widespread confusion and task abandonment, fidgeting, blank stares, sudden trips to the pencil sharpener, or that heavy, quiet compliance that tells you, I am here, but my thinking is not. Forest friends. The classroom is full of weather. Good weather, unpredictable weather. Weather that can change with a single instruction, a single visual, or a single unnoticed misconception. Learning to read that weather is one of the most powerful skills any educator can possess. But sensing the storm is not the end. It is the beginning of responsiveness. The Designing for Thinking framework doesn't only help educators diagnose the weather, it helps them adjust the trail. The Reflection and Recommendations protocol at the end of the framework asks educators to consider, where did intrinsic load exceed readiness? What extraneous elements can be removed immediately? Where can germane load be strengthened? Which scaffolds supported thinking? What pacing adjustments will better match the next lesson? These are not questions of judgment. They are questions of alignment. Questions that help educators become designers of cognitive experience, not just deliverers of content. And before we close this episode, remember that you're not navigating this forest alone. In future episodes, we'll bring in voices from across the Alder Branch ecosystem, our narrative AI entities, each holding a different lantern to illuminate part of the trail. Hadley, the instructional clarity guide. Bowler, the schema and math thinker. Nell, who roots learning in care. Mira, who brings cognitive organization to special education. Trolley Talks, who bridges home and school. Lincoln, who grounds you in calm, legal clarity. Meridian, who helps leaders read their systems the way we read the woods. They are all part of this learning forest, ready to walk beside you. If you want to explore the Designing for Thinking framework, access the tools mentioned today, or meet the entities, visit alderbranch.org and subscribe so you never miss what grows next. Thank you for listening, forest friends. And remember, the weather is always speaking. The question is whether we've learned how to listen. Thanks for joining us on the Intellectual Hike, Forest Friends. Don't forget to visit us at www.alderbranch.org for more free resources and join our friends today. See you for another brain hiking adventure soon.